There were two constants in Martin Pike's football life: excellence on the field, controversy off it. Both came in spades. Welcome to Open Mic, Martin Pike.
Thank you, Mike.
Now, amazing record. Like 27 finals, 9 years in preliminary finals, 6 grannies, 4 flags. I mean, you've got to be mightily proud of that.
Yeah, I certainly are. I suppose it happened really quickly because every year seemed to be finals and grand finals. So
Yeah.
it wasn't time to sit back and reflect too often because the year after year challenging again for another grand final tilt.
Another flag. Do you know how lucky you were? Did you think on the way through how blessed you were to be able to sort of do all that?
Oh,
I mean, you
absolutely.
played for 4 clubs,
Yep.
And yet had success at every one of them, including the best and fairest at Fitzroy.
Yeah, you've got to be at the right time, at the right place, sort of thing. If the club's not ready to win flags or the list isn't good enough to win flags, then you might go through football not achieving too much. But for me, with all the things that went on off the field and given opportunities at other clubs, I went to clubs, I think, that were ready to win grand finals, or that's what their list said. And I think I was a top up to their list that if I got everything right on the field, I'd be in there starting 22, and that's how it sort of went for me.
Melbourne took you with number 9 pick in the 1992 National Draft, yet you only lasted 2 years at Melbourne. What happened?
Well, I think we both know that. Look,
I asked the questions, you knew the answers.
Look, I come over as a 20-year-old and I wasn't ready for professional football, simple as that. But it was hard, you know, you leave home, you're 20. I think I was getting paid $80 a winning game at North, so getting a lot more at Melbourne. And, you know, there was no boundaries sort of set for me. And the guidance wasn't there. When you look at today's football, they've got probably 5 people working in the development. Back then, they pretty much give me a Melways and said, away you go.
That was it.
Yeah, pretty much. There wasn't a lot of support around the club. Like, having Neil Barnwood that knew me from Adelaide was helpful, but as far as away from the club, there wasn't too much help.
So was it one thing or a series of things?
A series.
Series of things, yeah. How were you affected by that? I mean, did that knock your confidence, or did you just sort of say that's a step in life and I pick my life up elsewhere?
Well, the thing is that when you make mistakes, Mike, if you don't get over them and look, I apologised every time I manned up and said, well, this is what I've done wrong. I took whatever punishment that was given to me. A lot of times I was dropped or fined, but once that was over, then it was about trying to get a game again and
so
determined.
Were there any specifics at Melbourne that really hurt you?
No, not really. Just, you know, you miss a session on a Sunday morning. I wasn't a great Sunday morning trainer.
I know that.
But during the week, before games, I didn't have any problems with alcohol. A lot of people talk about alcohol-related incidents. There was, and a lot of them, or all of them, were after games, not before or during. You know.
Did you learn your lesson on the alcohol front?
It took a while. It took a long while. But look, I'm a sucker for good company, and I'm a person that don't know when it's time to go home. As simple as that. You know, if I left when everyone else went, I wouldn't have a problem.
You're off to Fitzroy. You win the best and fairest in 1996. Yet you didn't excite a lot of interest when Fitzroy closed, did you? I mean, there were, in the case of Brisbane, they had 8 picks from the Fitzroy list and ignored you.
Yeah, didn't hear a thing from them. Not even a phone call. Or I don't think anyone from Fitzroy actually knew what was going on, other than the 8 players that were getting contacted by the Brisbane Bears or Lions. Other than that, I think there's a lot of players that didn't know what was going on at that time. If there was phone calls made to 30 blokes, I definitely wasn't one of them.
So did that disappoint you?
Not really.
Frustrate you? No?
No, not really. For some reason it should have, but I was walking out of Optus Oval one day and we played Essendon, and Kevin Sheedy was in his car, flicked his lights at me, so I walked over and had a chat to him, and I honestly thought that I was going to get drafted to Essendon. We had a quick chat and he said he was interested in recruiting me. I think there's been talk that he really wanted to, and these recruiting managers didn't want it. But also Dennis Pagan had made contact with me. So missing out there, I was pretty sure. Sorry, I was pretty sure that I was going to get drafted anyway.
I saw Fitzroy's last couple of games, one on telly and one live. The second last game at the MCG. And the last game Fitzroy played in Perth, a very sad occasion, but you were on the field. What was it like to play in the last appearance of a foundation club in the AFL?
It wasn't, to tell you the truth, it wasn't built up that big. Like the last game at the MCG, I think there was nearly 70,000 people there, a lot of past players. But as players, we didn't get told any of it. We didn't know that there was a big parade beforehand. All we did was turned up and played the game. They should have had past players walking through the change rooms all day and, you know, maybe even spoken to us. But no one knew that they were there. They didn't say, oh, all the past players from the past are going to be here. You know, there was nothing said, so we just went out and played another game, and it wasn't a good one.
You're the last best and fairest winner at Fitzroy. Does that mean anything to you?
Oh, it means a lot. It means a lot. It comes up. A lot of people still talk about it. A lot of people know me for it. A lot of Fitzroy people always come up and say they know that I'd won the last best and fairest, and you know, it's a great thrill to have that associated with my name.
Now, 1996, you win the BNF at Fitzroy. Fitzroy closes. Yep. North Melbourne's the premier team that year, and yet they were the ones that came looking for you. Did Dennis say to you what he saw in you and why he was so keen to get you, Dennis Pagan?
Not really, I don't think. He just liked the way I went about it, and it was an opportunity.
So your first flag, the first of the 4 flags, comes at North Melbourne in 1999. Yep. 12 months later, you're gone. Yep. Why?
What we talked about at Melbourne. Same thing. Behaviour. Off-field. And I was stressed again. It wasn't during the week. It wasn't prior to a game. It was always after a game that you go out and let your head down. And, you know, that's something I didn't learn too quick. That this wasn't acceptable.
How disappointing was that, given that you were at a club that you thrived at, you'd tasted the premiership experience, and then it all turned sour? Yeah,
look, and, you know, I don't have any, you know, problems with Dennis Pagan, the decision he made. Like, Dennis made the right decision. I was, you know, he gave me a couple of chances, and I paid him back on the field, but off the field, you know, he gave me a couple of chances and I blew it. And it was sad to leave because they were a good bunch of blokes at North.
There was a family day at the zoo, Martin, do you remember it? Family day for North Melbourne at the zoo after a NAB Cup final. Yep. You turned up at the family day, were late and probably overly refreshed. Is that fair?
That's fair. We played the NAB Cup grand final the night before, so it's a night game. So you haven't left the MCG by 12. You go out, all the other boys were out, but I didn't go home. I went straight to the zoo.
Did you?
Pretty much.
How'd you get there?
Taxi. But they seen the condition I was in. I think there was a jumper presentation up on stage. I got pulled aside and said, look, you better go home.
Before you got your jumper?
Yeah. Yeah, so I got it.
Who gave you that message?
It would have been Greg Miller and Jeff Walsh.
Did you? History sort of suggests that they stamped your papers that day.
Yeah, well, if they did, I still did a right to play every game. You know, once your name been stamped or a big cross goes through it, a lot of people struggle to get a game after that. I played every game that I was fit to play in, and I played a preliminary final. Was my last game at Melbourne and North Melbourne. So that might say that I'm determined to keep playing no matter what the consequences. When
you had a big night, like you didn't go home after that NAB Cup final, where do you go? Is it the casino?
Yeah, the casino a lot of times.
Yeah.
The thing is, I suppose growing up, the people that are older than me didn't have many opportunities to stay out all night because pubs and clubs are shut at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. You know, when I come through, they were starting to stay open till 5, 6. And if you wanted to get a beer, you could.
Do you remember going to the casino one night after a North loss and I think playing blackjack or poker, I'm not sure which, for a long time and doing quite well? Do you remember that night? When was that?
It was after the 97 preliminary final.
Yep.
I think I took out $300 with me that night.
Yep.
I blew 100 very quickly on the punt, had another 100 to drink, and then I had to decide what I did with the last 100. I threw it into the blackjack dealer, and about 4 or 5 hours later, I think I had 20 grand. Couldn't lose.
Johnny Blakey was looking after you that
Johnny
night, wasn't
Blakey,
he?
yeah. The whole table was with North boys. Yeah, and I said to Johnny, I'll be out for a bit longer, Johnny, could you please take this home with you? And he did, and his wife was petrified that they'd get robbed.
Yeah.
And 2 days later, he said, I better give you that money back.
You once told a teammate, when this teammate suggested to you, had you been more Spartan in your lifestyle, that your life might have been different, but your answer was you wouldn't have been who you were and you didn't want to be a robot.
Well, that's true. That's true. Look, people I think some people disguise who they really are just to get further in life. But I'm who I am, and I'm not a closet person. I do things, and it's out there for people to see and to be judged on.
Yeah,
and
okay.
I was judged harshly, but
Do you think
I brought that on myself.
Yeah, so do you think you've been marked harshly or not?
Oh, absolutely. But
do?
I brought it on myself a lot of the times. Yeah.
Okay.
When people talk, a lot of the times they don't talk about the premierships, they talk about the off-field stuff, and it's not easy to win a premiership.
No, it isn't. You moved to Brisbane after the 2000 season for what was a dream run. I mean, 4 years in grand finals, 3 premierships. I want to take you back to your first meeting with Lee Matthews. Now, you realise the gravity of the situation. You needed another club. This was a club on the rise. Matthews was a tough taskmaster. How did that go?
I got Ron Joseph was my manager. He told me where to go and all that. Told me the wrong hotel to start with. So I got there about half an hour early, thinking, right, I'll be ready prepared. The time goes past, still no Lee, no Gubby Allen. Probably half hour after the interview should have started, Gubby Allen walked into the foyer and said, "Oh, you're at the wrong hotel." So I walked up to where they were staying. They were in shorts and T-shirts and thongs. I had a suit on. It was 40 degrees. And just, spoke about football. And obviously what Lee heard and saw in me was good enough to get picked up.
I think they all knew you could play. I mean, that was a given. Yeah. I know for a fact that Lee was impressed that you actually thought enough about it to get dressed up properly and be in a suit. Did you think it was the last roll of the dice?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't think a suit should really matter.
Well, why did you wear one then?
Well, that's a good question too. I put one on and away I went. But I actually went out to Ron's office first, and we sat down and had a bit of a chat and talked about what I'd like to get across. So I went into that meeting prepared for whatever they asked.
So what was the message? What was the sell from you to the Brisbane people?
Well, the sell was that I was keen as mustard to keep playing. 28 years old. It's not going to cost you much to get me up there. I'm not going to come on big money. I'm happy to play on what you can fit into your salary cap, which didn't improve after 5 years. I didn't get a pay rise.
I was going to ask you about that.
Didn't get a pay rise the whole time I was there.
Is that right?
That's right.
Do you remember what the fee was?
I think it was roughly about 80,000 base, so that's guaranteed, and then $3,000 a game.
And you finished up. You were a 3-time premiership player on that money.
Yep. 4 times.
Is that right?
Yep.
No, I'm talking about 3 times in Brisbane.
Yep. Every year
So we're talking 80,000 base.
Yep.
And 25 times 3,000, 75.
Yeah, about 150,000 I got.
In your last year?
Yep. After being a 4-time premiership player, didn't get a pay rise.
Was that one of the reasons that you were angry, or you expressed a large degree of anger towards Michael Bowers, the CEO of Brisbane?
Not at all. No.
Now, we're talking about an incident after the 2004 losing grand final, correct?
Yep, that's right.
Late night in Brisbane. The CEO Bowers is still there.
Yep.
You have an altercation with him.
That gets blown up. You
didn't headbutt him?
I wouldn't have got a week in today's football.
Did you drop your head into his face?
I might have leant on him.
You might have leant on him.
But you wear glasses. If you get hit in the face with glasses on, it's going to make a bit of a mess.
Did cut his nose, didn't it?
No.
It didn't?
I seen him the next day and he was fine.
It was front page story in Melbourne. Do you remember that?
I wonder how it got down here so quick. I don't think I'd got home before that phone call was made by someone.
What's that implying?
I don't know. But, some people, they work undercover, I suppose. You know, people that should have been there to protect that story were the first person to get it out. So that was interesting.
I wrote that story.
Yeah, I know. And you got that phone call. You know who rang, and I do.
I'm old now. My memory's left me.
Well, I do. I'm not that old.
Okay.
But, that's no dramas.
So you don't... honest answer now, there was a collision of sorts, but it wasn't major.
There's minimal contact, and at the end of the day, we're both in the wrong. Like how I...
What, because he was out too late?
No, not that. Well, people don't have conflicts if there's not two of you going at it. You know, I'll wear my blame of it, but at some point, Michael has to say, well, he was in the wrong too.
So why was he in the wrong?
Well, we're both having the discussion.
Yeah.
Was this that way?
And it wasn't? Was it not about the money?
No.
It wasn't?
No.
And I'm not saying this to patronise you, but I'm amazed at that money for someone with that record. It was just, do you think you paid for your reputation?
That's what it was, yep. There's no doubt. There's no doubt that they saw me as a person that needed probably football. And I'd play for minimum.
And on 1 year contracts?
On 1 year contracts. Like if I was a lawyer, I'm sure I could have said, you can jam it. I'm going back to practice law. And because I didn't have that, I think they thought, well, okay, well, he'll play. I love football. I'll just play. If they paid me less, I would have still played.
Did you arc up about it on the way?
Oh, I went in there and asked for more. There's no doubt about that. But when they say you're only worth what people are prepared to pay, well, you walk out there and say, oh, well, that's it.
Do you remember the most substantial amount of money that you earned in any 1 year of football?
Yeah, it was about 170.
Wow. That's at Brisbane?
No, that was, well, roughly, when I left North Melbourne and Brisbane, I think they were roughly about the same. But at North Melbourne, it was guaranteed the whole amount, not games played.
Did you resent it when you heard that other players are getting sort of 600, 700,000 bucks a year?
You did?
Yeah.
Thinking, how good would that be? You know? And that's, I don't know if that played in the back of my mind when I did stuff up where, hang on a minute, you want me to be like everyone else, or how about paying me the same?
Tell us about the Brisbane memories. It must have been the best 4 year period of your life.
Right. Amazing. When I first went in there, I think the first year in 2001, we were 4-6 after 10 games. We played a game at Optus Oval against Carlton, who beat us pretty well, and it was embarrassing. And Lee Matthews that day, and it probably the only time that he ever showed real disappointment in the team. You could see it in him. His body language, the way he spoke. He didn't point anyone out, but he was just very disappointed. And then from that day, I think every player walked out of that meeting thinking, well, hang on a minute, one of the best people in football over 100 years has been really disappointed with us. And I think that really sunk in, and everyone, not as a team, didn't talk about it. I think they all walked away and said, well, I don't want that to happen again. And then we start winning games, and we got on a roll.
What was the strength of Matthews, the coach? I mean, most people, I think, seem to think it's his man management and his evenness. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think having Lee Matthews in our corner just gave us that much confidence, because at the time we had to beat Essendon, who's got Kevin Sheedy, who can stir up the media, Eddie Maguire and Mick Mulder at Collingwood, who always wanted to bring up the salary cap. So having Lee always defending our group and our club was magnificent for the playing group. After
the break, the Wakelands. The preliminary final, 2003, was it, when you played the Swans in the preliminary final? You were in trouble at three-quarter time?
Yeah, the third quarter, they probably kicked the last 3 or 4 goals. They had all the momentum going into the last quarter. Lee had spoken to us, and then Vossi grabbed us also. And I actually said, because we were walking back, we looked like we were about to go out and lose. That's the body language. And people were just like dawdling back into Vossi, so I'd give them a couple of swear words, and everyone come in, and then we went from there, and I think we ended up kicking 5 or 6 goals to their nothing.
You kicked 3 of them?
I kicked 2 in the last quarter and 1 in the first.
Okay, 2 in the last quarter. So what was the gist of your message?
My message was to get the hell in here quick, and Vossi talked about, having a real crack in that last quarter. There's massive reward if we do win it. There's a grand final next week. And, the boys went out there and played as well as they could. 2004, you're going for 4 in a row to equal the famous Collingwood record. The AFL programming came under criticism that year. You had to play a preliminary final in Melbourne. Yeah, at the MCG, At night, right? Which reduced it, which took one night off your stay at home. Did it affect you, do you think? Absolutely. The coach thinks so. Absolutely. Yeah. Like, we were at ageing list. A lot of us had played already 3 premierships in a row, so you're playing the extra 3 or 4 games a season. But to finish, I think we finished second. That should have guaranteed us a home final in the preliminary final. There was a rule in place saying the MCG had to be used. What should have really happened is, if Port Adelaide played at home on the Friday night, we should have played Saturday afternoon at least, and got home on Saturday. Or they play Saturday afternoon and Port Adelaide play Saturday night at home. And they pretty much got 2 days. Yeah. So 8 years on, that's the system in place now. Do you think it cost you the flag? Yep. You do? Yep. You know what I would have said if I was running the Brisbane Lions. We won't see you at the parade. We're going to stay in Melbourne or in Brisbane as long as we can, and we'll get down for the grand final.
The grand final of 2004 finished with Lynchy auditioning for Jimmy Sharman's boxing troupe, throwing 300 punches at Darryl Wakelin,
Yep.
most of which missed. Shane Wakelin criticised Lynchy that night or the next day,
Yep.
and then you hoed into Shane Wakelin.
Well, Shane was a player from Collingwood.
Yeah.
He wasn't involved at the in the game.
Yeah.
Oh, look, I just thought I'd stick up for my teammate.
Well, you did, and it was quite colourful. I'll remind you about what you said. This is the Wakelins, right? Quote, "They both sleep with the light on and in bunk beds. And for them to have a crack at Alistair Lynch, stop. Everyone in football knows that they are weak pricks. If they want to have cheap shots at Lynch, well, come here and have cheap shots." Now, that was in the Herald Sun of the day.
Yeah.
My memory, I might flatter myself here, but my understanding is that you rang for me and I wasn't there.
Yep.
And then you expressed these views to another reporter at the Herald Sun.
That's correct. It was halfway through Mad Monday. So I'm surprised my
So there's a
humour
common
was so
theme.
good.
So do you remember vividly
Yep, I could.
what you did?
It wasn't my phone. I don't know whose phone I borrowed. I just thought I'd make a phone call and have a chat.
Any regrets?
No, why?
Just wonder. Sometimes we say and do things that we...
Yeah, there's regrets when you don't do things right, but I don't regret saying that, no.
No.
Not at all. But the Wakelins, they were good players and, they're good people. And, I think they've moved on and I've moved on from it.
This is 8 years on. Is this the closest we're going to get to an apology, or have you crossed paths with them?
Yes, I have. I've played in the EJ Whitten game and played with them. And
Did they take offence at that?
No, I don't think so.
Because I reckon they're good blokes.
Yeah, they are. Look, if that upsets them, well, they might sleep with the light on. But they should be right.
Yeah, I'm sure they are.
Yeah.
I mean, but those
they would
things...
be.
Yeah. It was just such a graphic response from a player that had played in the losing grand final team the day before.
Yeah.
Now, you said it was halfway through Mad Monday.
Yep.
Did you or do you have a drinking problem?
If a drinking problem is when you do have a drink, you don't know when to go home, then I've got a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But do I drink at home? Do I drink during the week? Not at all. Never have. You could come to my house after the show and there wouldn't be a beer in the fridge. Mm-hmm. So a binge drinker, probably yes.
Did you drink during the week during your playing career?
Never.
Never?
Never.
That means not once?
Not once.
What made you such a good player? I mean, and you were. That's a given. So why do you think you were so competent and so creative at league level?
Well, the 5 or the 6 grand finals I played on every line. Mm-hmm. So for a coach, I think I give him great flexibility with the way he set up. If a spot wasn't filled with who he wanted to have there, I'd probably go there. I played centre forward when Jonathan Brown was out.
Yep.
I played back pocket when there was resting tools, and so I think I give the coach and my teammates a bit of flexibility. And I was determined. I loved winning.
Mm-hmm. Were you a sledger on the ground?
Big time. Yeah.
Did you work on the principle that you could get into their head, and if you could, good luck?
Yeah, and it was a lot of fun doing it. I was seeing blokes get upset by a few words, and it did throw people off their game. But never. We had a psychologist up at Brisbane the last few years, and we had people's, what would you call it, their profiles. Mm-hmm. And you might be a thinker, Mike, and would say, we might walk past you and say, look, Mike's a bit of a wanker or whatever, and you
That's not the first time.
Yeah, but you might then go and think, well, how come everyone thinks I'm that? Or you might be a feeler or a mozzie, or I think it was.
Yeah, now explain that to me. What's the mozzie mean?
Well, the mozzie, people that walk in a room and they're all buzzy and talk and, they get around every person in the room. That's a mozzie. Then you've got your thinker, that explains itself, a feeler and an enforcer.
Who's the best player you played with?
Tough one. Like Wayne Carey, I think, has to take that crown. He was an absolute gun. But I play with, when you win premierships, you've got so many good players. But with Wayne, he was a player that stood up on all occasions. You only had to kick it to his area and he'd do the rest of the work. Playing the hardest spot in the ground. Without him, I don't think North would have won the premiership, so he could turn the game.
If you went out late, which the North blokes did a lot, could you match it beer for beer with Duck?
I think so.
That's good form.
Yeah, he could have a beer. but that was the thing that brought us so close, I think, at North Melbourne. That I think he might have even been in a partnership at the Redback Hotel. And we'd all go back there after a game. And if you weren't there, it was probably strange. But nearly 100% of the blokes that played that night would have gone back there for a beer.
So the modern day player wouldn't understand this, but my understanding was that Dennis knew this happened, but Dennis said it worked. I mean, when work time came, you presented yourselves and you were very good at it. So he turned a blind eye to what happened Saturday night or Friday night. Fair?
Yeah, fair. But you can achieve a fair bit over a beer too. Like, I think with football today is they don't have to look anyone in the eye straight after a game if they've done something poorly. Or they haven't worked hard enough as a team player.
Why don't they have to do that now?
Well, they get in their car and go home.
Do they?
Pretty much.
Don't the blokes socialise these days with each other?
Obviously not. If they do, they're not out having a beer. So I think a lot of issues got solved after a game between, well, why didn't you do this? That was great that you did this. So, yeah.
So you think the rules are tough or fair these days about what players can and can't do in season?
I think they're hard, there's no doubt, because they're people. And people, they're young men, that you take away a lot of their youth. So I hope that because we're taking it away when they're young, they're not doing things that they should have been doing when they were 20, when they were 40.
How many kids you got? You got
2.
2?
Yeah.
Do they know the darker side of your football life or not?
Not real sure. But I don't think, I don't show them in any way, the dark side. I'm a great family man, I think. Every opportunity I have, I go out and play with them. I think they can look at their dad and say, well, he's doing a good job with what he's trying to achieve with us kids.
Which is the most important thing.
Absolutely.
But do they know how good you were too? I mean, do they understand? Ben's just played in his first premiership team, so he might get an understanding of that. His dad played in 4 AFL premiership teams. But do you think, have they seen you play?
They were both very young kids up in Brisbane, and I think they might have gone to the creche. But, I'll remind them, I'm sure.
How do you want to be remembered for your time in footy?
Well, the premiership stand, 4 premierships, and I'm sure that won't get lost in history. But, I was a likeable person, I think. I played it hard on and off the field. But everything that I achieved, I had to work hard for, and I was prepared to do it.
Mate, it's been a fantastic career. I say that in all seriousness. I mean, you should be mightily proud of what you've done. The record speaks for itself. We've loved watching you play, and sometimes we've enjoyed what you've done when you haven't been playing.
Made it easy for a journalist at times.
Well played, Martin.
Good on you, Mike. Cheers.